Hi everyone, welcome to the Glasgow Clubbing Podcast. This is episode 3. My name is Soban.
My name's Nick.
And we are extremely honoured to welcome such an important person in our scene, not just in Glasgow, not just in Scotland, but the entire worldwide scene. Please welcome Dave Clarke.
Good afternoon.
Hi Dave. How are you?
I'm very well.
Thanks for joining us. So Dave, before we get into all the things that you've been involved with, would you mind just telling us a bit about yourself, what you do, and your early musical influences?
Well, currently I'm SLAM's manager, one of the SOMA Records crew. I put on the SLAM club nights and generally just try to avoid getting a proper job.
Where were you born, Dave?
Interestingly, not in Glasgow.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in Reading. I grew up in England for 8 years. Mm-hmm. My mum met a Scottish guy after my dad had left, and I was taken to Scotland. All my English relatives thought I was hard as fuck because I lived near Glasgow.
Your accent.
The funny thing is you lose your accent, you know. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, when I got to Milton of Campsie, I used to say grass. The girls used to love it, but the boys took the piss. So
this happens.
Thankfully, I was okay at fighting and okay at football, and I got through.
Class.
I wasn't good at either, but good enough.
Good enough.
Dave, see before we...
I remember an American girl came to the school, and I said, see, when they say how, they mean why.
It's the colloquialism above us.
Dave, see before we get into talking about all the things you've done within the music scene, can you just tell us what were your kind of early musical influences?
Oh, I was a big Clash fan. I mean, for me, that band changed my life. Joe Strummer, massive influence, both politically, artistically. The whole band, first band I went to see was Undertones.
Where'd you see them, Dave?
At the Apollo. Years later, I met Fergal Sharkey because he put together an amazing techno compilation. He had a job with Richard from The Grid, Richard Norris, who interestingly also worked with Joe Strummer for a while. They got, Fergal Sharkey came to the Sub Club when we were doing the Saturday night, Slam and Harry.
With his big shed.
We're sitting talking to Fergal Sharkey in the fucking smelly bit up the back of the Sub Club, which isn't there anymore. And he's like, I fucking love Positive Education. I need to have that on the album, you know. I love that, man. Yeah, it was called Fuse. What was it called? Fuse Tracks. The compilation's not available, but someone's done a playlist on Spotify.
Yeah.
I think it was called, was it Fuse? Flux Tracks.
I remember Flux Tracks.
Brilliant set. It had stuff like Underworld Res.
That's right.
Didgeridoo by Aphex Twin. We were just so proud to be part of all of it. All of these, you know, Experience was on it, Hard 4. Some Nude Photos stuff, some Detroit stuff. It's an amazing compilation.
Yeah, I remember it out in maybe about 19, that would have been the sort of mid-90s that was out.
Yeah.
One of the first big techno compilations.
So the punk scene was a massive influence, you know, and the punk scene, what it gave us was it gives you this DIY philosophy and attitude where you're like, I can do that, I can do it myself. Because the punk scene had fanzines, Sniffing Glue it was called, the main one. People were like, well, I'll just write my own. There's no magazines covering our shit. We'll do our own. One of the reasons for SOMA is nobody wants, you know, we don't want to go to London. We don't want to talk to major record companies. Let's just start a label. And there was a bit of that in Glasgow before we started doing our clubs. Bobby Gillespie, before Primal Scream moved down to Brighton, they did a club called Splash One Happening that me and Stuart went to. Before the kind of dancey scene, there was that indie scene, but it was a kind of DIY club, you know. Mm-hmm. So I guess in my head it was something quite natural when we got into it.
So Dave, you mentioned there Stuart, right? And you're wearing the Slam 88 T-shirt. Can you tell us then, and you also mentioned the Clash, right? Can you tell us then, therefore, how did you Tell us how you met Stuart. How did you meet Ord? How did you meet John Matooney? How did you meet Glenn Gibbons?
Well, we better take it one at a time. Stuart and I went to school together. I, as I've mentioned at the beginning there, I moved up from England, so I was getting to know people from scratch, left all my mates behind. Stuart moved from Cumbernauld, not quite so far. Him and his big brother came over from Cumbernauld, probably about primary 5, primary 6. So this is a couple of, I don't know what they call it now, but a couple of years before you're in secondary school.
What area was this that you
Well, we lived in Milton Acampsey, but they made us go to school in Kilsyth Academy.
Yeah.
Now, my mum was like, you need to go to a non-denominational school. I didn't know what a Catholic was when I came here, so it turned out I was the only English Catholic at the school.
You'd have been popular.
Well, back to the kind of okay at football and fighting, I just managed to get by. But my mum was a primary teacher, so I was like, I'm going to study at school, but I'll still cut about and be into music, into football. Stuart was a bit, not a delinquent, but he was like, he got his art at O level and left school. He didn't like school. And school isn't good for people that are creative sometimes. Absolutely. You know what it's like. So we didn't really pal about that much. But then there was a fateful day in 1981. So we're both 14. I go to the bus stop. It was my 3rd ever gig. I'd been to see the Undertones. I'd been to Stiff Little Fingers. Each time, my big brother, who's 2 years older than me, we've got a lot of mates that are in between, you know, a year younger than him, a year older than me. He's like, you're not coming with us. So I had to go to these gigs myself. So that, you know, my dad picked me up after the Apollo. He worked at the university, my stepdad. He used to go and queue up with the punks and get me a ticket.
Brilliant.
But I was going myself. So on that Clash night, my pal Gary Kennedy, the two of us went. We had 2 tickets. Now, he always claims that he stayed in to watch the TV premiere of Jaws. You know, there's only 3 channels on the telly. This film's coming on. You know, he's like, I'm staying in to watch Jaws. I mean, we know his mum wouldn't let him go to the Clash, basically. So I'm at the bus stop with an extra Clash ticket. Now, Stuart's there with wee Caswell and another guy. They've only got 2 tickets. Stuart's not got a ticket. There's a similar story to this coming later on as well. So I'm like, fucking hell, I've got a ticket to sell. You need a ticket. Me and Stuart, best pals from then on. We went to the Clash together. Great. We started, you know, you'd save your pocket money up to buy an album. So it'd take you about 4 weeks. Yeah. I'd buy one album, he'd buy a different one, we'd tape it, you know, so you can look. The whole thing about taping was it wasn't killing music. It was for people that couldn't afford to buy the record. Yeah, absolutely. You know, this has been the whole story of piracy in a way, you know, if people could, I mean, now's very different. Let's not get into that. Spotify. But so firm friends, man, we were fucking gigging buddies from then on. So Dave,
so that's how you met Stuart. So was it Ord then that you met next?
We didn't know Ord for a long time. Stuart and I did 4 years. I mean, I was very young when I went to university. I went to Strathclyde University when I was 16 3/4. My mum had got me in as the youngest kid in the year because she wanted to get me out of the house. She worked in a school. Yeah. So she's like, get him out of the house, four and a bit. I was like so when I left school at 16, I was at university, and it was a beautiful time for student unions. We had some great bands. We'd like Paul Weller doing the Style Council, supporting the miners' strike with Billy Bragg, and I went to see REM at Strathclyde University. We went to see the Smiths at the QM. And Milton Acampsey was so far away. So that first year at uni, I had to have somebody with me to get a taxi home. We couldn't afford it. We used to have to sneak drink in, get a taxi home. Then the second year I was there, I got a flat sharing with these 4 guys from Paisley. But, you know, it was like 2 to a room. But the beauty of it was the older brother of one of the guys, they were involved with the Ents department at QM. They were putting gigs on in there, working with Scott Fife, who went on to work with Regular Music.
There's loads of gigs going in at that time.
We got in with them, you know. We used to help put a few posters up, get the odd free ticket. Stuart would come out all the time, DOS on the floor. A year later, me and Stuart got a flat, you know, so we were sharing a flat. And during this time, just as I was leaving university, about the age of 19, 20, I got a job in this pub, Chimichangas. We actually started working in Tennant's Bar. Me and Stuart got a job, which was another story. They used to make you wear a tie, and we had these kind of pattern ties, you know, like fucking trendy looking. And the guy with the kind of sort of Kajagoogoo type sort of bleached hair, it was only girls that worked in the lounge downstairs, and any time there was trouble, they'd bring a buzzer, and he's like, rip your ties off, lads, run downstairs, we've got to throw these guys out. Me and Stuart are like, what, us? So anyway, I got this job in Chimichangas, which was a kind of trendy spot, which is now Cooper's Bar.
Cooper's on Great Western Road.
At the time, it was fucking great, because I was like a lowly buzzboy. I used to empty the ashtrays and clean the tables. You got a T-shirt to wear. The bar staff got more of a Mexican pattern shirt, but you had the restaurant staff, the kitchen staff. We used to get like 5 taxis down to Lucifer's, which is the venue that's now the Sub Club, on a Saturday night. We just all piled down there. It was all about going out. I eventually got Stuart a part-time job because he was working in a garage. He's like, I need to get out of here. Working in the parts department in the garage, he's like, I hate this. I was like, I got him the job in the pub eventually, on about the 10th time of asking. And we, you know, he then was a buzzboy, and I became a barman. And Big Ord comes back, big, tall, handsome guy with a tan. He'd been at Sheffield University, soaking up the Sheffield scene. But he was originally from the West End of Glasgow. I mean, I remember the first time we met, I'm like, who's that big fuck? Who's he think he is? Walking straight in and getting the shirt and all that, man. I'm sitting here with a Buzzboy T-shirt. So eventually we all become pals. Stuart and Ord, you know, everybody could put a tape on in the bar. It was a party atmosphere working there, but Stuart and Ord would often be the two that were fighting over putting music on. You know, they obviously had this, I want you to hear my taste in music.
None of them had started DJing yet, but they had that mindset.
They had that mindset. They started buying records. So that's how we met Ord. Ord became part of the party crew with us. I mean, at one point, Colin Barr, who you had on last week, he used to do Joe Paparazzi's in town on a bank holiday Sunday, fresh, which we'd go to. Very Balearic, the music they played, because he'd been out in Ibiza. They used to do one across the road in what we call Cleopatra's, which is now that Irish studenty place.
Yeah.
They had a big fucking camel. You had to stuff camel. You had to duck under to get in the toilet. But anyway, so it was Party Central. Ord got a job in Fury Murray's, which was next to Lucifer's Stroke Sub Club, was the other kind of newer hip venue. That is now Exit. Yeah. Exit is actually in a place which is close to our heart, you know, the same venue. Ord had a job in the bar, and he's like, Stuart and him were buying records at this point. Every now and again, they'd say to Graham Wilson at the Sub Club, can we get on and play a few? Can we get on and play a few? You know, eventually he gave in and went, you can have half an hour and I'll take a wee break.
So what was the type of music at that point, and what year would that have been?
That would have been 87, and it was all kind of funk, hip-hop, which was all quite fresh. You know, a bit of indie still, a bit of Joy Division,
Dynamite,
you know, bit of a mixture.
That. Yeah.
Ord's like, you're not going to believe this. I've managed to blag us a night, man, at Fury Murray's. We've got a Wednesday night. Who the fuck's going out on a Wednesday? We've got a Wednesday night. We've got a Wednesday night. We called it Black Market. We had this kind of gangster, you know, like 20s gangsters on a flyer. Black Market, like Prohibition. The name Slam hadn't been conceived at this point, and I end up doing the photocopy and dishing them out, talking to our mates, come on down. We got about 100 people down. Had an okay night, and it was kind of, fuck, this is all right, man. We could do that again, you know.
So this was 87 then?
Yeah. So it could have been 86, but I think 87.
So tell us about how Slam then formed.
Well, we went through, we did this Wednesday night, and then of course our ambition was, the Sub Club was always a bit cooler. Now, at this point, as you'll see from the Sub Club's Instagram handle, it's Sub Club 87. Mm-hmm. So Sub Club originally was a club in that venue. That venue was called Lucifer's. Yeah. And then it moved to another venue. But eventually the guy that did that club paired up with another guy called Greg McLeod. Graham Wilson paired up with Greg McLeod, and they took over Lucifer's and called the venue the Sub Club in 87. Right. So in 87, we were like, oh, we've been given a night in the Sub Club. You're not going to believe this. Everybody's going to, Black Market's going to do a night at the Sub Club. But it was one of those things. We'd had our beginner's luck. We never got it twice because our mate from the pub, Bobsy Mullen, who danced and sang like Mick Jagger, he was in a band called Giant, who were super cool. You know, they were on that kind of Orange Juice, Bluebells kind of scene.
Postcard Records kind of stuff.
So all of our mates went round. He was doing a gig at Fury Murray's the same night we were doing Black Market at the Sub Club. We're going, saying to our pals, you better be coming on the night. We're sitting in there, 50 fucking people turn up. Everyone's round at Fury Murray's to listening to Giant. So we're sitting there, the club closes early, we've got to fucking shut the club at 1 o'clock, walk round the corner to Fury Murray's. Well, everybody's like, you all right? How you? Oh, I was going to come round later. I'm like, I'm not talking to you. we were like fucking having a drink, not talking to anyone. So the next thing we did, we got another date in Fury Murray's, Black Market's third attempt. Of course, the first thing we did was we booked Giant to play.
Yeah, of course.
The boys were going to DJ, but we were going to have the band that had fucking outdone us playing on the bill. So we packed it out. And then that was us off and running. We got a regular Thursday night at Fury Murray's in 1988. They're like, you guys are fucking happening, man. You can have a weekly. And at the very same time, another character that was on the scene called Sleepman. Now, his real name was Workman, but he changed his name to Sleepman as a kind of... He ended up going into marketing. You know, he didn't last long with us, but he came to us and said, look, I've got this night in Tin Pan Alley on a Saturday, and Tin Pan Alley was a total, you know, a club you wouldn't go to.
So that's now
Diamond Dolls.
Yeah, so it's that. So this club was owned by a hairdresser called Dick Barton. He was a kind of flamboyant hairdresser. He went out with a famous Page 3 girl called Linda Lasardi, who was always in the papers, not just on Page 3, and. Upstairs they had loads of gangsters with suits on. It was all mirrors. They had a restaurant. People would have their fucking bit of food on a Saturday night. But they had a first floor room that didn't really get used. And he gave us the first floor room, which held about 300 people. And we closed it off to the Neds upstairs. And that was our club. We covered it. We were obviously looking at magazines like The Face and ID and paying attention to what was going on in the London scene, and it was, you know, we were like fucking hell. The boys were, people at the Sub Club like Graham Wilson and Shagan were playing soul music. They were playing Luther Vandross, but they started playing stuff like Nude Photo by Derek May, Rhythm is Rhythm. Some of these records,
Black
No
American
UFOs.
Records.
So we were kind of like, we made up all these smiley banners, covered all the mirrors up, got a smoke machine, flavours in the smoke machine, a strobe on, no other lights.
That's all you need.
Oil lamps. We met this guy, Dr. Bob, who was a psychiatrist with a long leather coat. He didn't believe in therapy, he believed in giving people drugs for their mental illness. And he also, him and his mate Ronnie Heaps, with long hair, they were into this psychedelic visual shit. So they had projections on the wall. Dick Barton had a topless picture of Linda Lasardi as you walked in. We covered it up with a big smiley and all that, you know, egalitarians even back then. Yeah. And we just got that, the whole thing took off quickly because the people that came to the club were just from all walks of life, you know, East End, West End, North Side students, ne'er-do-wells, but into this new vibe, into this fucking, let's get on it. And I think it was more, you know, it was probably, I don't think there was much ecstasy about it or anything then. It was probably people, acid house, I'll take an acid then, or a bit of this and that. But it was more of a kind of very young people. A lot of them couldn't get into the Sub Club, which was a bit of a
slightly older,
trendy vibe, you know, so... We got to know a lot of them, and anyone we thought looked a bit individual and different, we'd say to them, do you want to come round doing the flyers with us? Let's fucking get out there, bringing more people on board. And that was the first night called SLAM, and it started on July the 23rd, 1988.
Where did you get the name from, Steve? I mean, where did you get the inspiration for SLAM?
I actually got
from the Future
did a record called SLAM.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, in a way, it's a common. If you Google SLAM, you always get basketball. It's you know, it's a bit. It's quite a hard word to find, you know. That's why we attach the word DJs on the Instagram page because you can't find SLAM.
And
I think But yeah, Future did the record Slam, and that was one of the records that was getting played there. There actually wasn't enough house music to do the whole night with house music.
Of course.
So you'd be hearing records like Paid in Full, hip house, hip hop, electro.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It was just, and even stuff that was a little bit more commercial, like Yaz and the Plastic People and S Express and stuff, mixed in with Daryl Pandy.
Yeah.
But it was very much all about acid house for a few months, right? Acid noises, Adamski, Stacker Humanoid, these kind of things.
Very early records.
Towards the end of the year, well, instantly the Sub Club were like, what the fuck's going on here? So Greg and Graham were like, can you do a Friday at our place? We don't like some of the crowd, but we'll let them in a Friday, not on a Saturday, you know. So we ended up doing Thursday at Fury Murray's, Black Market.
Yeah. Think
which we called Ecstasy at the Sub Club.
We'll not ask you why.
And Saturday Slam. And then we I think we quickly ended up doing a Sunday with Harry at the Sub Club, which had various names. So we were doing pretty much 4 nights a week in different venues.
So at that
by the end
time,
of '88.
So was the music eclectic in all those club nights, as in, or did any of them have a theme? I guess it was very early.
It was pretty much all acid house, as much as you could find, and fill in the rest. It was the same people 4 nights a week.
Dave, just to, so obviously there'll be a lot of people which will watch this, right, will just know Slam as Slam the DJs, right? But it has to be kind of clarified that Slam was a club night.
Slam started as a club night.
And can I see, obviously, we now know Stuart Nord as being Slam, right? Now, can you just kind of just tell us, did you not kind of...
I'm not the best, by the way.
Did you
certainly aren't.
Just to kind of ask you, because I don't think we've kind of asked this before, did you not want a DJ also? Nah.
Oh, I'd better taste the music, but I just no, do you know what? I think very quickly, see if everybody does the same thing. Yeah. That's not a team, is it?
Yeah.
No, it's not. But it is quite interesting because I mean it's early on for 3 of you to recognise, 2 of them are DJs. First of all, there's 2 DJs, not 1 DJ.
They were instinctively chasing the records. They were buying a lot of 12-inch records.
And then, I mean, you basically an organiser, making things happen.
I know, and I it wasn't anything I'd studied or anything. It was just natural, I guess.
Out of interest, what did you do at university?
I did. I know I could have become the next Bill Gates. Electronic engineering, computer science, which was heavy maths for 4 years.
Yeah.
I was just good at maths.
Yeah.
But I'd got one job interview, and then my mum's like, come on, you've left uni, what are you doing now? And then by the end of '88, ID Magazine did an annual at the end of the year, and they had the top 10 acid house clubs in the country, and 3 of them were our clubs.
Wow.
Black Market, Ecstasy and Slam. And I showed it to my mum at Christmas. I was probably looking pale, like I looked like I needed a feed up, but she was like, oh, that's all right then.
Yeah. I mean, I
get it now.
ID Magazine, for people that maybe don't know, was a huge influence in the late 80s and early 90s. It was
some kind of style music Bible, wasn't it?
Really was. Culture, music, and it was very on acid house.
So it kind of justified, if my mum's happy, I mean, we just thought we'll do this until we need to get a proper job.
Yeah.
Hopefully. I mean, my gran said to me when I was 4, what do you want to do? She told me, I was like, how come it's the old guys, the lollipop man? She goes, you start when you're 65, when you're retired. She goes, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a lollipop man, so I don't need to start work till I'm 65. Now I'm 58, I'm almost there.
You're almost there, right?
So Dave, right, so Slam, in terms of the club night, was born in 1988, right? And that was the night at the Sub Club. Now,
that was the night at Tin Pan Alley.
And then moved to the Sub Club, sorry.
No, we did the Friday at the Sub Club, Ecstasy.
Right, Ecstasy, sorry.
The Thursday, Black Market, which had been our little once in a while, became a weekly club the very same week that we started. So 21st of July, Black Market became weekly. 23rd of July, Slam was a weekly Saturday at Tin Pan Alley. Sub Club kept their Saturday going, but they got us in on sorry for touching the table, on the Friday night. for this. They wanted one acid house night. Colin Barr, meanwhile, was doing an acid house night round at Fury Murray's, which he probably can't remember the name. I'm pretty sure it was Zoom.
Yeah, he never mentioned that at all.
Him and Shagan.
Before we get to the Tramway Rave from 1989, Dave, can you just tell us what led to the Tramway?
Well, we were approached, and we all used to drink Red Stripe. Red Stripe was the drink of choice, the beer of choice in the club scene for people of our age. Might have been a Jamaica connection. It was a nice beer. It was quite strong and quite a big can. So Schlitz was this kind of weaker thing. It was a smaller can. It'd been promoted by TV adverts with Boston, more than a feeling. And it was just something you would never consider drinking. So they came and said, look, we've got money. We want people to drink Schlitz. Can we give you the money to go and tour all the clubs in Scotland? And we'll give you money to do a free party in Glasgow and all that. It'll be We're like, yeah, that sounds amazing. I can actually remember in Fury Murray's, this guy, Gil Donald, was between I think Tennants were going to distribute it. I didn't know that at the time. Gil was kind of working. The company became KLP, who were one of these. I guess it was one of the first. You see it a lot in the last few decades. Brands getting involved with clubs to try and make that brand look cool. This was maybe one of the first examples of it. So I can remember the Red Stripe sitting on the kind of wall thing when Stuart ordered DJing, and he's moving it and putting a can of Schlitz there. He's like, you can't have that if you take. So we ended up going to I think it might have been Fat Sam's in Dundee. It was certainly Fever in Aberdeen, where Jackie Morrison was the DJ and Mike Grieve was the manager. Mike from the Sub Club now, one of the Sub Club owners and directors. So we had this. They gave us money. We did a party in the Winter Gardens. We got to bring stereo MCs. Various artists, and it all culminated. We also, I can't remember where else we went. I'll probably be able to tell you by the end of it. We went to one other, maybe somewhere in Ayrshire.
So the Winter Gardens in Glasgow Green?
Yeah, it was, what an incredible party, man. And that one was free. Then people paid into Sub Club and Fury Murray's for the nights. We had Electribe 101 with Billy Ray Martin singing, amazing, who ended up singing on a Slam song years later. And it culminated in hiring the Tramway Theatre, getting a legal licence till 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. It was actually, to my knowledge, the first UK all-night licensed rave. Amazing. Because you had this whole illegal scene going on down south, but somehow we managed to do it with a licence. But the Tramway's got its own fabled stories, man.
Had you been booking DJs up until then? I mean, because obviously Stuart and Ord, were they the main DJs or were you bringing up guests?
Stuart and Ord always DJ'd. But yeah, we brought up quite a few guests. Yeah.
Who was the sort of first guest?
Adamski was one.
Was that in the Sub Club?
Adamski came and played the Sub Club. John De Silva from the Hacienda. And that became reciprocal. Slam went down and played at the Hacienda in the beginning of 1990.
Wow.
But yeah, the Tramway happened in 89. We did this campaign that was like psychedelic posters, tripped out posters that said 5 weeks to go.
I remember them.
4 weeks to go. And the thing we haven't touched upon, we would actually paste every junction box in town. Now they put stuff on them so they can't take a poster, and now they threaten venues with a license if you put posters up. So we would walk, and we did it in such a kind of cool way. Cruise Clothes was quite a trendy shop, but they had really solid bags. So we'd fill the bag up with wallpaper paste. I mean, I knew from doing the political stuff at university, we used to do fly posting and dodge the police and keep out the way of the police. So we'd walk about as if we're doing our shopping. One guy'd have the bag, one guy'd have the posters, another guy'd be the edgy, keeping the edgy. And we'd stop somewhere, go, right, paste on the fucking thing, stick the poster up, paste over it. Somebody going, if nobody shouted edgy, you just did it.
Yeah.
People, and we go from one end of town to the other. I mean, West End to East End, all the way, and every junction box would have a poster on it saying, enjoy Slam, looking like a Coca-Cola thing, or we did Never Mind the Bollocks, here's Slam, like the Sex Pistols thing. And people are like, what the fuck's it? So we did it with this 5 weeks to go, 4 weeks to go, 3 weeks to go, and then it was just there's going to be an all-night rave at the Tramway. And we got in touch with the guys at the Hacienda, Leroy and all that.
It was very clever
They were
marketing.
bringing buses down from Aberdeen. Because we'd done the wee club tour, everybody came from everywhere, but loads of people came without... There was 1,500 tickets and 5,000 people. Well, maybe not 5,000, but
so the road was blocked.
The police overreacted.
Yeah. Tell us who played at the event, right? What was the setup like? And I want to get on what happened outside, right? Because it's quite a well-known story, quite infamous about what happened outside.
That one, 808 State came up and played. Mike Pickering and Graham Park, the Hacienda guys. Lil Louie.
Wow, from Chicago.
Although, you know, it's quite hard to remember. Slam, of course. Because I'm sure I got on to play Fuck the Police when we got in, and they'd lock the door and wouldn't let anyone else in.
So let's talk about that, right? So,
NWA.
From what I read from a couple of articles, the campaign went really well, right? There was people coming from all parts of Scotland and England,
Blackpool,
right? And there was. Tell me what happened outside, because a situation happened where people were snatching people's tickets.
Well,
so
people were behaving, and then it just got to the point where the police turned up, did a roadblock. Everybody was unsure. People had started coming in. Other people weren't sure if they could, and then it was just a kind of rammy, you know. It was like as many people got in as could, and then the police went, nobody else in, whether you got a ticket or not, whether you worked there. I almost didn't get in. I'd gone out for something. The only person, to my knowledge, that got in afterwards was Jim Maturi. Squeezed in the back toilet window. God knows how he did.
Paul Sweeney did that. He just told me that.
So a couple of people got in the back toilet window, and that was it. There was and there was room for more people. The guy Gil Donald that I was talking about, he'd started off at the beginning of the tour wearing a suit. And then halfway through the tour, he's got a baseball hat, a Slam t-shirt, and a whistle. And then at that gig, there was like some kind of burst pipe, wasn't there? And there's a flood. The police are going, you've got to close. Gil got arrested. I don't know if he probably didn't get charged, but I was just laughing at the whole thing at the end. But we were shitting it. We thought, we're going to get fucking crucified here. Because I can remember the next day, Street Rave had maybe not Street Rave, but one of those kind of Motherwell, like Frank, there was an all dayer on at the Plaza.
Crew Club or something, yeah.
There was an all dayer on at the Plaza, and we went down. Stuart went down to DJ, and we were on the mic going, look, fucking, we're going to do something. And in our head, we were just determined to make amends. I mean, it was amazing, wasn't it? But half the people didn't get in.
Yeah.
So Stuart and I went over to Ibiza. We kind of just thought, let's go and get our heads the opposite of get your heads together. We managed to catch the closing night of the Coup Club, the closing night of Amnesia with Alfredo. Me, my girlfriend Sandra at the time, and Stuart, man, what a time we had there. And we came back, we were all kind of like, doing stuff at the sub club, wearing our beads and our moccasins and all that.
So would you say then you get influenced by Balearic going over to Ibiza at that time?
I think the whole Balearic thing had been an influence here anyway, because as I mentioned very briefly, we went to Colin Barr's Fresh, and those records like Gibbero and all that were getting played, you know, and Alfredo just kind of put it together a certain way, and also Adamski played at the closing party of Ibiza. It was exciting over there because we didn't know how to get a ticket. How do you get in? And somebody's like, oh, you go to this bar, and they give you a ticket, but each ticket gets 2 people in. You can buy a ticket, and we'd bought 2 tickets between the 3 of us, but nothing on it said you could get 2 in. It was all like, oh, will we get in? And outside we met we didn't know him, David Holmes, and this guy, Ian McCready, come up to us. They'd recognised Stuart. He'd been in, I don't know, one of the magazines, like DJ Mag or something, you know. So they go, you're Stuart McMillan. And he's like, yeah. They're like, look, we're just getting chatting. They're going, we do a club in Belfast, Sugar Sweet. And they'd got, there were 4 of them. They got 2, no, wait a minute. there were three of them. They'd get a ticket. The way it worked out was we could get one of them in, but David Holmes was left outside. I know I was trying to do the arithmetic there. There were 7 people, but there were 3 tickets.
Yeah.
So Holmes is like, we've only just met him. He goes like, I'll get in. Now I know that the tickets. So we go in. We're all like, well, this is amazing. Fucking open air club. Small white thing from Amsterdam, first time ever and all that, you know. And he comes in half an hour later with Brian Tilsley from Coronation Street. The actor who plays Brian Tilsley, whose name evades me, had turned up on his own. It was like people like Gary Davis, the Radio 1 DJ, used to go. It was all a tale of two halves, because you had the rich people and then the ravers like us. And Holmes walks in with him going, yeah, I'm in.
Brilliant.
We were the kind of people that you'd suss out what drink they had, sneak it in, and then you just kind of open it in the corner and make it last you about 3 hours, because the toilet, the taps had salt water in. So you couldn't just drink the tap water, you know, you had to, you're there for hours.
Aye.
So Dave, so this was what, 89, 90 we're talking about here now?
That was 89.
89, and
we're still in 89.
We're still in 89, and just
it's going to be a long hour.
Please forgive me. So, should we talk? So, did Atlantis already happening by this point?
Oh, let's go. So we're still doing the Friday at the Sub Club. Right. Ecstasy has turned to Joy.
Yeah, you have to change it.
Joy. We'd moved from Tin Pan Alley to Fury Murray's on the Saturday. They're like, can you come and do... We also, our way of making amends for the Tramway. The Tramway was amazing, but half the people didn't get in. We hooked up with music promoters called Regular Music, who are still going. They still do the bandstand summer sessions, Waterboys, all these bands. But they were rock promoters, but they were really cool guys from Edinburgh. They used to put David Bowie on at the Apollo and a lot of those gigs. So we knew them through the guy Scott Fife that I mentioned back from the student days, the QM. And we're like, let's do it properly. We'll get Regular Music to book the venue and help with the production and deal with the licensing. And we'll just sell the tickets and book the DJs and, you know, make it. And they were like, brilliant. I don't get it, man. You know, it should be guitars. We do, you know, a lot of people thought if it's not guitars and drums, it's not proper music.
I remember that.
There was a
time.
backlash against DJ culture, electronic music, but they were all for it. So we got the SEC. It was called the Scottish Exhibition Centre. They've called it something different now, similar. They've made the initials stand for something different, haven't they now? But anyway, it's called the SECC. we called it SLAM. I think we just called it SLAM again.
The first one, yeah.
It was an all-nighter with the Burning Man, you know, the guy with the ready brick glow like this. Adamski came up. Beats International, which was Norman Cook, Fatboy Slim and an early guys with the girl out of Grange Hill singing. That'd be good to me. Adamski had Seal singing with him. Slam were DJing. I think John Da Silva DJ'd. I can't remember who else. You can find these flyers.
What kind of numbers were you getting?
3,500 we sold for that.
Yeah.
So that had jumped up from 50.
Right
that was to fit all the people that didn't get in the Tramway in.
Yeah.
And that was on till 8 in the morning. The bar shut at 1. You could only get a bar till 1.
Didn't matter as much in those days.
And then it was juice bar till fucking 8.
Yeah.
And that was a massive success. It's not a brilliant venue, the SEC, for these things. You've got to hang the acoustic drapes up, and it's a big box. But it achieved something. It went off without any problems. Yeah. But the real special one was on the back of that. In September of 1990, we did Slam 2 in the park, Slam in the Park,
right,
at Strathclyde Park.
Was that?
And the only way to make it work, we put a massive blue tent up, again with Regular Music. They were like, look, if we put the Waterboys on the Friday, that pays for half the tent.
Yeah.
You put the rave, the all-nighter on the Saturday. So we had an 8 o'clock licence. The sun came up in the morning.
Yeah.
People in Motherwell and Hamilton were writing to the local paper saying, this is a disgrace, my house throbbed all night.
I can remember, I remember the sort of police coming in just because it was the end of the rave and the sun coming through, and then playing Come Together,
Yeah,
Primal Scream.
Old finish with Primal Scream, Weatherall come together as one.
So Dave,
the sun came up, we had 808 State, we had The Orb, Alex Patterson.
Derek May played.
We had Derek May, one of these techno innovators. We had Together, who were part of the Blackpool rave scene. They did a song called Hardcore Uproar. I mean, a really sad story there. Jonathan, like one half Sudie's still going. You can find Sudie online, blogs and stuff. But Jonathan and his girlfriend Emma had Scottish relatives. I remember standing with them in the sun at the end, and that kind of ego and all that. And then a few weeks later, they were in Ibiza on a motorbike and got fucking killed. You know, I fucking broke my heart.
Yeah, no, it was a sad because they were at their kind of peak at that moment. You know, playing a lot of the raves, but it was quite an incredible rave. I mean, did that because that wasn't exactly the same site that Tea in the Park ended up in?
Next to the lake, we had this. We hired this thing that was called an inflatable ambient zone called Colour Space, where you could go inside and just sit about and crawl about.
I vaguely remember that.
Oh, it was funny, man.
So Dave, so Slam in the Park Rave was 1990, right? And there was only one.
Well, that was the second in a series. So we ended up doing a series of 3 all-nighters. And it's been interesting because in preparation for this interview, I've tried to dig out a few things. And we did a fanzine back in 1990, and I was reading what I'd written back then, and it started coming back to me. So we did this. We thought the next step's to go and do a bigger thing. So we did one at Ingliston, which is where Terminal V is now. Right. So we did the big room at Ingliston. It was even bigger. It was like 5,000 people, again with the regular music guys. And it was just kind of stuff like, we'd got this like fucking Dom Jolly type mobile phone for a ticket number. And I can remember you could hardly get a reception, but I remember getting a hello. It was like, this is the Hibs Casuals, yous again. And it was like the Hibs Casuals were putting rumours about they were going to go in with AIDS, needles with AIDS on them and start stabbing people. Yeah. All this kind of stuff. And even though we had people on like The Beloved, you know, like all the kind of shit we were into, Sun Rising. And I mean, it just kind of, for us, we knew when we did that we weren't ever going to do it again. That's why we kind of left it for Resurrection and Fantasia and all the kiddie rave shit to go on, because we were like, this isn't us. Yeah. We were thinking this is a beautiful thing. All of a sudden, in the magazine, I remember I read, even with 100 security, you still had to look over your shoulder wondering if there was a gang of casuals going to suddenly. Yeah. The whole thing had flattened out. Instead of loving each other, some of them were getting angry heads on again. Yeah,
it was a dicey time, certainly over in the East Coast. We've touched on it, and Keith touched on it in the previous interviews.
So we basically had a sellout gig, probably what you would call the biggest success of our career, and we went, never again. We're going back underground. And I truly believe the Arches didn't come along for another year and a half, but I truly believe, we were also doing your original question was, when did you start the Saturday at the Sub Club? It was 7 days after the SEC.
Right, okay. So
the first Saturday in April 1990, we did exactly 4 years, Atlantis, Slam and Harry. But so this Ingliston thing in 1991 and the early February 91, I think, we just went, never again, thanks to everyone, but we're not doing it again. And it just meant all we were doing was clubs again. Mm-hmm. We left the whole commercial scene to other people.
But I mean, that's quite a bold move at that kind of time, especially because the anybody that would be on would just continue trying to get bigger and bigger, you know, but whereas you sort of saw... And it's held as a good...
I wouldn't even call it integrity or taste. It was just ethos, you know. We were just like young. I mean, the thing, I was literally 20 when we did the first club night, you know.
Atlantis started when?
1990 April.
1990 April. And how often was that?
It was every Saturday.
Every Saturday, and that's all obviously with Harry.
Well, that was the beauty of it was we were offered the night, and the first thing we said was, well, look, we're doing loads of stuff together, me, Stuart and Ord. Let's bring Harry in. You know, we done. I think we were doing a Sunday with Harry, or we done stuff with Harry. Mm-hmm. We used to go to Harry's clubs when we were cutting our teeth as just young clubbers.
Yeah. And obviously Stuart and Ord what kind of music were they playing at that point in 1990? Because obviously what they play now was different to what they were playing then.
It was so eclectic. Well, the whole thing is, the scene then was so eclectic.
Right, yeah.
There wasn't any divisions in music then.
This kind of Balearic idea, this is what Alfredo, God rest his soul, taught us. You can play anything you want. We came back from Ibiza one year, I don't know if it was 91, maybe 90 I think it was, because Ord went over and did a thing called Ibiza 90 along with Weatherall. It was organised by Charlie Chester from the Flying Crew.
It was filmed.
Mostly London DJs, but they took Ord along. Me and Stuart went over on holiday. Stuart wasn't even playing. And I remember being in a club, and we just... I've never liked Phil Collins, not for any reason. And In the Air Tonight came on, and every little drum beat, the hairs were standing up my head. Or played Phil Collins In the Air Tonight, his last record one night. It was just anything goes, man. Yeah. Anything goes.
Yeah, I mean, in that kind of scene, it worked at the time, and plus it was a drum machine as well on that record.
I mean, equally, the warm-up would be completely ambient. Stuart and Ord, one of the first records they did was a record on UF Orb on the album. There's a track on there called Close Encounters, which is a slam track with the Orb. And I think that was the second time they'd been in the studio, smoking loads of weed with Alex Patterson and Youth down in London.
Legendary producers.
So I think it's a good time to now move on to how SOMA started, Dave, because you obviously co-founded SOMA with Stuart and Ord and Glenn Gibbons and Jim Matuni. Can you just tell us how that came about, and then we can go into the early era of SOMA?
Jim was one of our pals. He was a student when I was a student. He was a law student at Glasgow Uni. But we all used to pal about, and Jim also worked in the pub. Glenn used to drink in the pub. Glenn his background was he'd been a guitarist in a kind of quite a successful jangly band called Fruits of Passion. But then him and a guy called Sniffer had got into the Beastie Boys, and they'd started a band called Clarke. Clarke were the Scottish version of the Beastie Boys. So they were he was a musician, but he knew how to use a studio and drum machines.
Yeah.
Clarke actually supported the Beastie Boys in Liverpool once.
Did they?
And they almost got bottled off stage because they'd antagonised the crowd, but there was a net up like the Blues Brothers movie, and all the bottles were fucking flying off the thing. Anyway, that's another story.
Yeah.
So Glenn would come in and drink Jack Daniels in the pub. I used to make people stiff drinks, by the way. They did a happy hour in Chimichangas where the manager said, he goes, look, it's half price for the drinks, so put half measures in. I'd be like that. Fuck it. People would leave the bar stool after getting cocktails off me. And when they went to go to the toilet and they'd stagger, I was like, I'm not putting half measures in. I'm putting double measures in.
Whatever the party.
So, so we knew Glenn. We used to always just talk about it. And Stuart and Ord, the third time they went into the studio, first time was Botany 5 in Edinburgh, really cool guys in Edinburgh. Gordon, the singer, and Aqua Bassino, who was on Lauren Garnier's FCOM, his original band was Botany 5. Yeah. They also played in the Slam tent. Not the Slam tent, the Slam in the Park at Strathclyde Park. So we had a bit of studio dalliance, but right round the corner from Chimichangas, now Cooper's Bar, in Otago Street, there's the first white house you see. That was called the Tall White House. That was Sniffer had the studio in the basement. Yeah. Oh, his mum was so long suffering. They would be in the studio. Once we got it going, right, so they made a record. We decided, let's put it out ourselves. One side was Slam's record, although Jim and Glenn had worked on it, called Eterna. The other side was called the IBO. Jim's tribe, his father's tribe in Nigeria were called the Igbo. There's two tribes, two Igbo and Yoruba or something. Yeah. So Jim was IBO, so it's a kind of thing for his dad. And instead of trying to get a record deal, we just got some money. They got a grant, I think, and we just put some money from the club in, and we pressed 1,000 records. We wrote them all out. Each of that first thousand's got 201 person's handwriting, 200 in another.
Yeah.
Put numbers on them. And all the raves used to advertise through record shops. So I just got all the phone numbers of all the record shops, phoned them up and go, do you want to take some of these records? Yeah, fuck it. If we don't sell them, we'll send them back. And we sent 1,000 out, no distributor, and we sold them all.
They sold.
One of the people that still owes me, David Holmes with his sugar sweet shop, went out of business. David, if you're watching.
There you go, might be watching.
So that was the.
So that was SOMA.
That
just
was SOMA.
1,000 white labels, handwritten and sold, and that gave us loads of people loved it. It was like a hit in Ibiza. It was somebody in Italy bootlegged it.
It shows you, the
whole
network.
So it was, again, you could call it beginner's luck, but we just, this is brilliant. We were in the magazines, we just thought, fuck it, let's do another one. And then we got a few other people got involved. Bobby Bluebell and Dot Allison and Jim McKinven did a thing called Dove. And then Weatherall got into that and nicked it for Boys Own. He nicked it, he didn't mix it, he nicked it.
Did he, aye?
Well, we put it out and then he put it out later in a different version on his own label.
When did you start doing Slam at the Arches then?
The story of the Arches Theatre was, it had a small bar. Basically, that whole venue, which is the Arches now, it used to be derelict, like every other railway arch in the country. The other thing we haven't touched upon is 1990 was a special year because we got a 5 o'clock license in all the clubs. So Glasgow was European City of Culture in 1990. Unbeknown and accidentally to the councillors, they'd also adopted Glasgow Smiles Better. They'd adopted Mr. Happy as the logo of the city during the Acid House Revolution.
What a stroke of luck.
So you'd all these buses with Glasgow Smiles Better with Mr. Happy on. But they paid apparently £1 million was paid to clear out the arches and make it habitable for an exhibition during the Year of Culture in 1990. The exhibition was called Glasgow's Glasgow. I still don't know anyone that's gone to it. It was met with critical derision. I don't know, maybe it was good, but anyway, the Garden Festival over the river, which is still an almost derelict site. The arches had been cleared out for this exhibition, and then afterwards, so it wasn't a complete disaster, Andy Arnold, who's a theatre producer, had said to someone, could we use that as a theatre? So he used a tiny little arch in it with 30 seats. It was a 30-people theatre. And the guy from Blackfriars had a licence for the bar in it. 30 people would go and watch a play and have a couple of drinks. So we go in, and he's trying to get a bit of funding. We can't fund it because we just spent £1 million last year. Yeah. So we go in looking for a venue to do a party to launch SOMA. The first SOMA record came out at the end of 91. I think Andy Arnold was like, I went in with my mate Pedro that used to work with us. And we were like, can we do a club in here? And he was like, maybe. You need to explain it better. So we got Pete over. Pete spoke his language. All of a sudden, we'll do the Slam night on a Friday. We'll do a theatrical thing on a Saturday. It's going to help fund the arts. Yeah. And then April 1992, we did Slam at the Arches every Friday night for 6 years. So was it it was voted best club in the country.
So at that time it was because the Arches is now about 6 arches. So it was a full place. So
no, see when you walk in at Midland Street. Yes. As soon as you walk in, on the left was the bar. Yeah. On the right was what we called the Casbah. We just put loads of we had to fireproof them, loads of old couches, few carpets in the wall to stop the sound bouncing. And then the next arch was what you called the dance arch. Yeah. That's where the DJ was. Yeah. And then that was it. Yeah. The corridor, everything, nothing else had been developed properly. And the other thing was it didn't have an alcohol license through the back. So we basically for 6 years we did 600 people every week in the small Midland Street side.
Was it always Stuart and Odd Slam playing? I mean, no, sorry, were they now DJing as Slam?
Well, they put the records out as Slam,
right?
And we called this Slam at the Arches.
And who would you book then? Who were you bringing over, Dave?
Well, it was quite a mix. Alfredo from Amnesia, he also played at the Sub Club with us. He also stayed in the West End with us for a while and almost made a record. Andy Weatherall. Yeah. Andrew Weatherall. Underworld played.
Right.
Lauren Garnier.
We did a boys' own night with Underworld, Farley and Hella.
And then there was a link with Back to Basics in Leeds.
Well, we had a close tie with Back to Basics. In fact, I met the mother of my kids, my grown-up kids, my former wife, Mel. She was one of the Back to Basics crew. Mm-hmm. Right. Ali died. Ali, who was Dave's partner at Back to Basics, died driving up to the Sub Club.
That's right.
Yeah. So we just bonded with them thoroughly for years.
And were you guesting?
We'd go down to Leeds, they'd come up here. I mean, Dave often jokes, he's like, it's no wonder we take a lot of drugs in Leeds. 2 E's and LSD in the name.
So I want to move on then, therefore, to Positive Education.
Yeah,
because that was recorded when things blew up.
That was recorded in 93. It was actually SOMA's 8th record, and it had taken us 2 years to release 8 records. But, we were just kind of, one record we got a bit of money in, let's press up another one. So, you know, I used to joke, like, we'd started SOMA so we'd have an excuse to get up. We were doing 4 club nights a week before then, and I'm like, we hardly saw the daylight. SOMA is our reason to get up in the daylight.
It's good a reason as any.
So tell us about Positive Education then, Dave.
Well, that took the vibe and the idea happened very quickly. We were still in Sniffer's basement. His long-suffering mum, Jim would go up and start cooking in the kitchen, and he burnt all the fucking saucepans, and all that. I was using Sniffer's bedroom as an office to do, like, phone people up. Do you want to buy this? Positive was the first time we actually needed to use a record distributor. We couldn't just deal with it ourselves. It's hard to conceive because the amount of vinyl we could sell then, I'll give you an example. Eterna ended up 1,000 were pressed. It ended up selling another 2,000 afterwards. Positive Education was one of these records that we had 4 or 5 different exporters and distributors in London that would phone us up on a Friday, and they'd be sending a fax through. I need another 200. I need another 2. As quick as we could press the thing up, it was getting shipped out around the world. It became our calling card. The reason Daft Punk wanted to meet us, their journalist friend knew us, and they knew us because of Positive Education. Yeah. The reason SLAM went to play, I went with them. We went to LA, San Francisco, was because Positive Education had got out there. There was no internet.
No.
This was our calling card to the world.
Was it fast, Dave?
You had this. You had Lewis, who used to DJ with the Shaman on tour. He goes, "This is my get out of jail record. See, when nothing else will work, I put that on. It fucking brings the room back."
It's incredible for that time at 1993. It's an incredibly forward-thinking track. It kind of predated that kind of techno sound.
But see all those nuances and. Right, so the whole track came together very quickly, but they painstakingly spent 8 weeks in the studio making it the way it ended up. Yeah. They went in every day, changed things, got rid of things. I don't know what they did, but they made a perfect record.
Yeah. Perfect techno record. I would like to know, because I wasn't I was about, but I was very, very, very young. Did it catch fire really fast? Or was
that one pretty much did.
Yeah, and see from that point, because Positive Education has become such a seminal track, right? In techno, right? That really blew up, right, massively, right? And how I want to know though. How you obviously were doing nights in Scotland, right, and whatnot, but I want to know how it felt for things to go that fast. I think that's good. That'd be quite...
One of my favourite positive stories is we for some reason, the police raided the Arches one night. Mm-hmm. My wife at the time, I've only had one wife and we're not together, but Mel's brother, he ended up moving up. Justin came up just for a visit and he came to the Arches on the Friday night. He's like, he'd been living in Bristol. He's like, this is good. And all of a sudden, like Paul and I used to do the door, me and Paul Sweeney, and there was kind of people we were knocking back some unusual people, and it turned out they were all plainclothes police. So all of a sudden, all these police run in, and I don't know why. I don't know who they were looking for. I think they made one arrest. So they stopped the music. They made a big hurrah, a big fanfare, and then there was nothing happening. Everybody was standing about getting bored. What? And eventually, people started going, get to fuck. And eventually I'm like, oh, just put it on. They just put Positive Education on. The whole place is bouncing. They all fuck off sheepishly. And Justin's like, is it like this every week? That was 1993.
So, but when was the sort of change in the sound then from SLAM going from... Because let's just say it was a kind of Balearic influence, but that was clearly a techno record.
You can probably hear it through Soma, can't you? Because Eterna's quite Ibiza. Yeah. Mm. Quite kind of emotional in a different way. And then some of it's a little bit like a kind of not progressive. It's kind of...
Progressive was it's kind of... was the sound.
But you can tell... I mean, I would say... I think one of the reasons we left the sub club was because they didn't want techno on a Saturday night, you know, so that's kind of 93, 94.
Yeah. So, Dave, from Positive Education, right, I think we can now move on to the whole Daft Punk story, because this is a major story in the history of Soma, right? Can you tell us the entire story?
Well, there's a massive connection to Positive, as we've touched upon, because... So... Nicky Holloway from London organised this rave at Euro Disney, which ended up, for whatever reason, it was in a building next to the Euro Disney Hotel. But so we all, instead of going straight there, I don't know if anyone's been there, but it's, it's an hour or two, it's an hour outside Paris. So a few of us, Darren Emerson, Stuart and Ord, me, Arden, who used to manage the Sandals, we all hit Paris a couple of days early. They DJ'd at the Queen Club, which was a big gay club in Paris that was into house and techno. And we got invited to this dinner through a journalist I knew, and he's like, there's a couple of boys who want to meet you, And we met them. They were lovely. They were young. I mean, we as I said, I started when I was 20, so they were 19 and 20 at the time. And they weren't coming to the rave, the weekender to get. They were just like, they met us in Paris, we were talking away. But we'd made it a week-long holiday. So me, Stuart, and Mel were going to go back. I think Glenn and a few others were going to go back to Paris for a few days after. So we'd hit it hard in Paris, gone and hit it hard at the Euro Disney, and then we were going to go and chill in Paris for a couple of days. I mean, I can remember there was I don't think there was much even credit cards and shit at the time. I don't know but I can remember I had to say to the woman that worked with Nicky Holloway, we've ran out of money. And she gave us all the fucking coins that she'd all changed for the event. All we had was coins on us for the last couple of days. A couple of hundred fucking pounds worth of coins. So anyway, we made a point of, we'll phone Thomas. Mm-hmm. Thomas takes us round to his mum and dad's house. He's got his studio in the basement in his bedroom. They lived up Montmartre. His dad was a famous, well, not famous, but Daniel Vanguard, a disco producer who'd, unknown to me at the time, he'd made DISCO and Cuba, the Gibson Brothers Cuba, Ottawa and DISCO. He'd worked with Bob Marley. He's like, Bob Marley, they get stoned, turn up late. These studios cost money. What are they thinking? Yeah. But so we end up meeting Thomas, going down. He shows us his studio and he plays us these tracks, and we're like, fucking. He basically played the very first record is Soma number 14. and it's called the New Wave EP. The track that ended up on Homework's called Alive.
Yeah.
That was the second track in the B-side.
Right, okay.
So he as he played those 4 tracks, that's how it appeared on the single.
Was he playing it live to use
No,
in the studio?
sorry, he played us the song, they'd recorded them.
Mm-hmm.
So we get back to Glasgow and he sends us a cassette. I know he'd also sent the cassette to Warren Garnier because Laurent had the FCOM label, Fnac and then FCOM, but Thomas didn't want to be part of the French scene. His idea was, it'll look more international if it comes out on SOMA. So they came on holiday to Glasgow, stayed at the flat with me and Stuart. Well, first of all, we got the cassette. We agreed to put it out. We just became friends. They came over, stayed at the flat at Heinlein Road on the couch, on the floor, in the lounge. I can remember one night we all came back from the Arches and I had the brand new heavies in the kitchen, Daft Punk in the fucking... We were all partying in Stuart's bedroom.
That's a party.
Dave, you mentioned the cassette.
And they hooked up with the Desert Storm guys. They loved them. Ali and Jamie, Busy and Quanger.
The famous illegal raves, party crew.
Well, SOMA number 13 had been Desert Storm.
Yeah.
That had been the 12-inch before.
Dave, you mentioned the cassette, right? Do you have it on you?
I've got it on me. I never leaves the house.
I think everyone would like to see it, Dave.
Can you please show us the demo? Thank you.
Oh.
It'd be much appreciated. By the way, guys, Dave doesn't have this on him at all times, right? So if you see him in the street, don't jump him, by the way, right? So this is the first demo that Daft Punk gave SOMA.
SOMA.
God, man. The New Wave Part 1, New Wave Part 2, Assault and Alive. And this is, when was this given to you, Dave?
This was sent to us in 1994. 93, rather.
I'm kind of like, see, cause Daft Punk...
And look what else I've got. The Clash ticket from the gig me and Stuart went to that fateful evening when
Well, see, cause Daft Punk's literally my...
£3.50. Slightly more expensive these days.
See, because Daft Punk's my kind of musical entry into kind of dance music, right? I'm kind of shaking a bit here seeing this. I'll pass this around, right? But this is like touching, like kind of holy grail
of history.
Do you know what I mean?
Do you know the thing I love about it? The cassette inlay is a different make a cassette to the actual cassette. It's a total tape over.
I won't open it.
No, do it, mate.
No, I'm just going to breaking it.
You're not going to break it, but that sounds
I'm kind of shaking here, but this is kind of. I mean, it is just a tape, right?
It's a bit of music biz history.
But that is. I mean, Daft Punk are the most greatest electronic dance act there's ever been.
I think they'll be looked at the way Kraftwerk are.
Dave, I think that should be in some sort of museum, but.
Well, next year's going to be SOMA's 35th anniversary, and we're going to do an exhibition somewhere in Glasgow. We've got the drum machine that Richie and Jeff always played on. We've got the mixer that was in the Arches in the 90s. We've got various things that you can come in and touch, come in and play with. We've also got a recording of Daft Punk's first ever, second ever live gig on the Renfrew Ferry. And the idea is you can come in and listen to it. It'll never appear on the internet. It's 31 minutes long.
And he left the room, right?
Live 909.
I think he was kind of testing me to see if I was going to run out steal it and run out and jump out the window. But yeah, Dave, tell us, so you put out the New Wave?
We put out the New Wave. It did well, man. We did a couple of thousand copies. It was Do you know the thing about that Alive track, though? It was second track in the B-side. The other tracks were a bit more fast and frenzied. Stuart and Glenn loved them immediately, and Jim. But that track Alive, when we started doing the Slam tent, which we haven't got anywhere close to yet, so many DJs dug that out and played it over the next 10 years. That was one of these hidden gems, it's like, so it did a couple of thousand copies on vinyl, which isn't massive, because when I was talking about all the distributors going, exporters, can I get more Positive Education? Positive Education ended up doing 30,000 copies on vinyl as a 12-inch record. which means if you have a copy, it's not that rare. What you want is a record that only did 500 that everyone wants.
So, Dave, I think you should also now tell us, right, about the funky tune, right? Tell us about the funky tune.
We used to go to this, usually Jim and I guess because Jim had been a law student and I wasn't the musician one, we'd go to this thing called Meedem in Cannes, which was it still goes on. It's a music conference where you meet all the distributors, exporters, people that, in those days, people before the digital revolution, people used to license your tracks if they'd been big 12 inches to put them on CDs. People would sell CD compilations all around Europe. So you might meet the Japanese guy. He wants to put the track on. And Thomas was like, look, I'll go with you. Fly into Paris and I'll drive down to Cannes. It's like about a 10-hour drive or something. So me and Jim fly to Paris, meet him and his dad. He drives us down to Cannes. His dad was amazing, though, because he'd always give us good advice. Mm-hmm. He was one of the original... he wasn't just a disco producer. He used to fight for the rights of songwriters. Yeah. He'd fight for the rights of artists. He'd disagree with all the collection societies in France. And he'd have a thing... He said to me, if you deal with a major label, don't look at the royalty they're offering you. Look at the deductions. Because basically, they could offer you 20%, but if it's got a 25% deduction, they're only really off, stuff like, it's not that interesting for the podcast, but Thomas actually knew more about the music industry than we did, therefore, because he'd grown up with this. Yeah. But we were all friends and fair people with one another, but we drive down loads. On the way back, we stop off again. So he starts playing us some tracks, and the second Daft Punk single was Daft Punk, Rolling and Scratching. Rolling and Scratching's, which is also on Homework, is quite a kind of techno, aggressive, gritty track. Yeah. So we're like, this is brilliant. And that the funk, I don't know if it had a name. So we get back to Glasgow and then we get this tape sent over. It's still the old days, probably still faxes and sort of stuff through the post. And we've got, people will know the other track because when we did a recent SOMA anniversary, the track's called Daft Drive. Yeah. Or Drive. So we get so Rolling and Scratching, we love it. The other track, we're like, that sounds like Rolling and Scratching, but maybe not as good. It's kind of drive. What happened to the funky one? I'm on the phone. What happened to the funky one? Thomas is like, I don't know, we're not sure. So he loves that story.
They weren't sure of it.
I don't know, I'm sure it would have, but it was like...
it was quite different.
I remember that, I was
So Dave, so what you're basically saying is, right, that you picked up on this funky tune, right, that you thought,
me and Jim
and they weren't too sure about it.
It was an unusual record, man. No one could mix it.
No, it was very different.
And when it came out, it was so slow. It was such a slow burner because it wasn't like you can mix it in on a house beat. And that funky tune was the funk. And it grew and it grew and it grew gradually. All of a sudden, I knew it was going to be a hit when Dimitri from Delight, Delight, Groove is in the Heart, he was playing it. Richie Houghton sends me it. He's playing it. I'm like, Richie's playing it. Chemical Brothers, they were playing it. It was like...
Because then music by then, it had separated into genres by then. There was techno and house, but there was different DJs playing that track. It kind of went commercial as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people and DJs are scared to do it as much now. Stop what you're playing and play something else.
Yeah, different BPM.
The other thing that used to happen, now you usually when a DJ plays, there's almost like a stop and a start. DJs used to mix into one another and just hand the record back. Mm-hmm. There was a flow. People didn't used to look at the DJ. They would dance with each other. Yeah. That's what we should be doing more of, dancing with each other. If you see me at a club, sometimes I've got my back to the DJ. It's no disrespect to the DJ. It's just I'm dancing with my people, and I want people to think the same. You don't have to look at the DJ when you're dancing. DJs don't want to be looked at. A lot of the they didn't used to. Now they're like, I don't know what they're doing, hip hop hands.
So Dave, see when the funk really took off, can you just tell us? I mean, obviously, is it Virgin put out their album, their debut album for Homework, right? Which
oh, it's quite a nice story, man. We started getting courted by all the kind of like island records. Were like, can you come and meet us? I mean, pretty much Richard Brown that worked with me at the time, we went to see all the cool, pretty cool labels that have done a lot of cool things. We kind of laid the groundwork for them. But as I've just mentioned, Thomas knew a lot more about the music industry than me, and he had his dad who didn't get involved in the business. But we'd also had this relationship with Virgin France. It was all the London labels that were getting in touch with us. It was hyping in the UK, I booked them a little tour around my little formerly Balearic network. So they played it Back to Basics. They played at the Heavenly Social in Nottingham or London. They played. I mean, they even played at. I think they played at Kelvin Andrews for Keele University. Yeah. So they did this little tour which culminated in the Renfrew Ferry, which is the gig that when we do the SOMA 35 exhibition, you'll get to hear. I'll dig out the flyer for that and people can see that. But so they kind of got this massive buzz in the UK. Virgin France had, for a few years, there was a lovely woman called Maya Massibouf, used to smoke like a chimney. We all used to smoke in the office. We were terribly unhealthy, but it was like, what's that program? Mad Men. It was like,
everyone drinking, smoking.
But so they'd been putting out SOMA tracks on compilations, and that was obviously in Paris where they could go. And so Daft Punk actually designed it. I'll get to this. They were happy working with them eventually, Virgin France. But because of the knowledge, like pretty much every major artist up to the point Daft Punk did their major deal, used to sign to a major, give their lifetime rights away to that bit of music. Mm-hmm. That major company would then bankroll them, but all they were doing was lending the money to pay for the videos and the tours, and then they would take the money back and pay them the royalty. What Daft Punk said was, we just want enough money, so we don't need money to live. They didn't have expensive habits. They wore the same pair of jeans, still don't own a car, travel on the fucking metro in Paris even now. Wow. So they just wanted to own their material, so they paid for all the videos. See that video with the dog that Spike Jonze directed? All those videos, they paid for that out of their advance.
That's incredible.
But they also had a deal with Virgin where they got all their rights back after 5 years, so they own all their music. Yeah. We did a beautiful thing with them. I met the lawyer in London. They had this show. He actually said to me afterwards he'd never seen a more honourable deal in the music industry in his whole life.
That's saying something.
So we actually didn't have a contract.
It's not, no.
No, but we fucking knew each other and we had made an agreement.
Like Factory Records.
It was a handshake.
Yeah. That's great.
So we had this arrangement where we helped them. They helped us back. I mean, the riches, we didn't get involved in their future career. They made sure we got a bung for all the stuff we'd done.
Yeah, of course.
And it was just very fair. And as I say, the word that doesn't appear in the music industry annals that often, honour was involved. Yeah. And friendship, which is still there to this day.
Yeah, fantastic.
So Dave, I would like to move on to the SLAM tent at Tina Park, right?
Stuart and I were at Tea in the Park in I think his second year. It was
Strictly Country Park.
I remember because...
Shaman played in... Who else?
Well, I tell you who played Black Grape.
Black Grape. The
Black
Prodigy
Grape
were on as well.
Anyway, let's not go into details. So we met Joe Strummer, who's our fucking hero.
Yeah.
He was trying to get me to find him a pill. Anyway, that's beside the point. He ended up camping next to Harry. So Strummer, Stuart was, I think they were, Stuart and or one of the two was going to DJ in what was called the dance tent at Tea in the Park.
Yeah, that's right.
And there was no monitor. But Stuart mentions it to Strummer, and then Strummer's running about, I'm going to get you a monitor. He's like, Jeff Ellis, there's no monitor in the fucking dance, get them a fucking monitor. The DJs, beat, you need it. So this whole kind of, we had, we had a great day. This is 96, I think. So we did our first Tea in the Park in 97, the very year it moved to Bellado.
Right, okay.
So after this, Jeff's a mate, we get talking, and the beauty is we'd done all that stuff with regular music, the all-nighters. Yeah. We also put Primal Scream on in the Plaza on their Screamadelica tour. We put The Farm on in the Plaza, working with regular. Yeah. I got the Plaza idea from the Frank Devine Motherwell lot, but they did their all dayers as we touched upon. But so Jeff's like, what went wrong with the dance tent? It was like, you've got certain dance acts that the agents want you to put on. Mm-hmm. You're putting a few DJs in between. The fact there's no monitors embarrassing. There's gaps in between. That's not you want to make a club. The Slam tent was all about taking the club experience into a big tent. Yeah. And it also, we'd got the remembrance of the Slam in the Park. We got the knowledge of we couldn't do raves again. We turned our back on raves after Ingolston, but it just seemed like the right time. It was like 97.
And of course, it was crossing, indie kids again, with dance music as well.
I think the first year they had and Daft Punk feature as well. I got this fax off Thomas. They hadn't even taken on an agent. They got this major deal, and this is the thing I say about friendship. He sends me a fax saying, and a fax, it appears in the guys that are they used to be called Jockey Slut, they're now called Disco Pogo.
Mm-hmm. Right, the book,
the Daft Punk book, and I gave them a copy of what I've got left of the fax because fax paper fades, but it just says, we agreed to play at Tea in the Park. Thomas T. Bangleton. I'm like, Jeff, I've got Daft Punk playing. He goes, have you got a contract? Have they got an agent? I'm like, no, I've got this. So Daft Punk played, Lauren Garnier played, but the next year they had to get us a bigger tent. It was so beautiful. People were buying a ticket to go to Tea in the Park so they could have a daytime rave in the Slam tent. Yeah. It was filling up at 12 o'clock midday. Yeah. And the beauty of it was, all of a sudden, it doesn't need to be an all-nighter. It doesn't need to have licensing difficulties. People just want to get in a big room that's dark with the lights on. My big brother had always been in the same bands, but he'd never got the scene. He never understood it. And he always went, you've got people, I'm here for the techno, not for... He was always there for the bands. And he came into the Slam tent and he goes, Dave, a bit like my mum... At the first year we did it, when she goes, it's okay, you're in the ID annual. I know you didn't waste your degree. My big brother goes, I get it now, Dave. I'm never going to take drugs in my life, but I get it.
Brilliant.
It's like a football match when they score a goal, but it's like that all the time.
Yeah.
Dave, what were your highlights from those early days of the Slam tent? I mean, any performances that you can recall which were major highlights, or
it's really
first
hard,
shows for certain DJs?
One year, Fatboy Slim was getting big, and I love what he does, but we always had a thing with the Slam tent where it didn't matter who was the biggest, it had to be a musical flow. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like who's the biggest at the moment. So, for example, Groove Armada would always play in the afternoon, and they loved it. They didn't have to play, you always go, I'm up on the bill, I should be playing later. That's what the other stages do. Mm-hmm. So we had Carl Cox was going to do it, and Fatboy Slim, it was the first time, it wasn't him, but his agent's like, oh, he's the biggest, he needs to play last. And I was like, how the fuck's that going to work? Fatboy Slim going on after Big Carl.
Aye.
And it was 1999. The third ever Slam tent. I've got a bit of video of it, and it actually did work. But it's like Coxie, it's totally going off, and Fatboy Slim goes on, the place is like fucking in uproar, and he managed to nail it. But I've heard him interviewed later, and he kind of goes, I knew I had to up my game after that. I didn't realise what these things were going to become like, because there was no other dance stage or tent like it in the whole world.
Really?
At the time.
Really? I mean,
up until 1999, the dance stage was always like, oh, we're going to do a dance stage. We're going to do a dance stage. It was like, even Glastonbury didn't fucking have it.
Really? But there was no like. It
was pioneering.
There was no
nothing, man.
The Fatboy Slim one I was at, I mean, from memory, he maybe went on about 6 o'clock or something.
No,
like that.
he went on last set after Coxie.
I can remember.
Jasper was there. Jasper was there with a water pistol. Harry had DJ'd earlier on with the Roots.
I was sure it was.
The Roots had played. This was the funniest one. The Roots had played, and then Harry went on after them. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Dave, see my first experiences of the Slam tent, the tent itself was like a kind of boomerang, wasn't it? Was it always like that? Because
we had this notion that we didn't. You know, when you get these big long tents and the people at the back are so far away, we had this. It was wider than it was.
Yeah.
So if you were at the back, you weren't that far back
from the stage, because it was built round it.
And these kind of concepts came between the production team at DF and the Slam crew. All together, you know, it was this idea. All we wanted to create was a massive club. There was no gaps between the bands. If somebody was playing live, there wasn't like take a 10-minute break while we change over. The music was always continuous.
Yeah. So would it be okay now to kind of move on to so much to get through here? Move on to Pressure, Dave.
I mean, Pressure coexisted with the Slam tent, because the Slam tent started in 1997.
Yeah.
This kind of Slam at the Arches, this is the night we stopped it. It was 6 years since the day that we began it. I'll read you out the lineup. Stuart McMillan, Ord Meikle, Thomas Bangalter, Guy Manuel de Homem Christo, Derek Carter, Chris Needs, Irvin Welsh, and Mischief Labar as the wise guys. Celebrating 6 special years. So that was pretty much, we were running this weekly club, and you know, sometimes you go, fuck, eventually you need to stop it. So we stopped
the organisation must have been, and
it's
amongst
just,
everything else,
like people move, like I've gone through so many generations of clubbers. People move on, and we just felt like would it slide? It might begin to slide. So we took a break, and we came back in October of that year. That was April.
Yeah.
6 months later, we persuaded the venue to get an alcohol. Not that we're alcoholics, but we wanted an alcohol license through the full venue. We didn't want to do one room you can drink, one room you can't. So the Arches got an alcohol license through the back, which is where we did the very recent Return to Source party. Mm-hmm. That's another story for another podcast, maybe even. But so Pressure began, and we managed to persuade the Chemical Brothers, old mates, to come and DJ.
Like the first night,
the first night of Pressure, Green Velvet, Chemical Brothers, Slam.
What a night.
Oh, what a weekend we had with them. We met these two. We met a couple from Eindhoven, ended up in a hotel room for 48 hours. They missed their other gig. We all had fucking PSV hats on at the end of it. Anyway, so Pressure started, and Pressure ran there for the 17 years until the venue closed down every month. And it wasn't always easy. Pressure had the ups and downs, but we created this bigger event, you know, different rooms. One night we had DJ Shadow playing. You can kind of mix it up when you've got that.
Yeah.
But I think my only thing with Glasgow is people are up for it, people travel to it, and everyone, because we were so good at the DIY philosophy, so many people do their own thing. Not just because of us, but we set a good example.
No, absolutely.
And I think places like the Arches, for me, got a little bit too commercial on the other nights, possibly part of the downfall.
So tell us about the types of people you would book for Pressure then, Dave, because obviously Pressure, the club night Pressure is such a iconic night in Glasgow, Dave, and it's been such a...
I mean, this could be one of my Slam tent highlights or my Pressure highlights. We had Ricardo Villalobos back-to-back with Richie Houghton. We had them in the Slam tent and we had them at Pressure, and they both vibe off each other because Ricardo's a musical minimal genius, and Richie's one of the techno elite from the old days, right back to the old days. And when they don't often play together, and they've done some amazing things for us in Glasgow and Scotland.
Amazing.
Jeff Mills is another one, where... Jeff was on the Fringes in Glasgow before.
When did you first book?
The thing was, I know Jeff played for Twitch in Edinburgh, but the people, I don't know who his agent was, but I can remember we were on Slam at the Arches. He was playing in this club arena in Oswald Street?
Yeah, just round the
with all the fucking young hairy, It
was a wee bit rougher.
Would you ever go in it?
Yes, of course.
So Jeff was one of the originators of techno, and Underground Resistance, Mad Mike, with some beautiful moments, bringing proper music. Mike insists on a certain keyboard that you can only hire in London. Just makes it really hard to do, man. Yeah. You've got to go, if I don't get that keyboard back to London, I'm going to be thousands of pounds out of pocket. Yeah.
So just to quickly move on to the Riverside, right? So you've obviously been doing the Riverside for the last 10 years. You've been doing it with Mark McKechnie. Can you just tell us...
with Mark McKechnie, Stuart and Ord, we're all kind of partners in it.
And Stuart and Ord. Can you just tell us about... Just tell us about the Riverside and how that came about. And
that was a great collaboration. Mark, with a guy called Brian Traynor, did a thing called Electric Frog, which was I think an occasional event, but it was eclectic. It was out in the street at SWG3 because SWG3 only had one room. The upstairs warehouse was the only club room, so it was kind of a narrow kind of tent in the street. And they were like, "Oh, can you come and do it with us?" Pressure. So we did it, Slam and Pressure. So we'd have people like Len Faki or the other Dave Clarke or Felix the House Cat. We collaborated. It was like Electric Frog and Pressure together. Mark, who now does the Melting Pot thing, we continued. We started the Riverside, and then the idea, basically, Muttley actually hooked us up with him, which is great. Muttley from SWG3 is like, see the outdoor stuff here, it's making too much noise. They don't like it. I know they're doing stuff outdoors. Why don't you meet this Glasgow Life, Riverside? It's another, you've got the council, the Schizophrenic Council. On one side, they're doing good. On one side, they're not doing good. Yeah. So a bit like 1990, Year of Culture. 1990, we had a 5 o'clock licence. 2 years later, a thing we didn't get to touch upon, we're actually fighting with them because they're trying to cut us back to 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
The minute 1990 finished, you went back to 3 o'clock. A year later, you got this guy, Councillor Coleman, trying to shut us down at 2 o'clock and give us a curfew.
And you can't
get in after 12.
To be in the clubs. I mean, that caused so many problems.
That's another story. We managed to get the Shaman to play in George Square as a big protest. I've got so many stories. I wish we could do more. But so Riverside came about through that collaboration. And it was beautiful for years, but see the problem with festivals, we didn't do it this year and we cancelled it last year. Yeah. Things get too expensive. A lot of promoters are fly-by-nights I wanted to be able to give everybody their ticket money back when I realised we couldn't make enough to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And I also didn't want to owe all the people that were going to work there money.
Yeah.
So I did the honourable, that word honour again. Not enough people in this business have got it.
Dave, can you just
It's embarrassing a bit, you know, but that's life.
But I mean, it's all. I mean, all the
a failure
festivals.
makes a success later.
But all the festivals, everybody must be under pressure because of how much the agents are charging, they're pushing up the
But
DJ
it's stupid
fees.
though. At the moment, the hotels are sometimes double.
Yeah.
You know, you're going, oh, inflation was 10%. It's 100% for hotels. Sometimes the flights, it's 200% more.
Dave, can you tell us, obviously it seems like the job that you do, promoting and event organising, has changed a lot since the 90s. Can you just tell us what's changed and what you think is missing in terms of a kind of attitude that you might used to have, you know, back in the 90s?
Well, the massive change might be the thing that can solve it, because if local people would go to see local artists promoted by local people, we could probably just afford all the cost of living rises.
Yeah, I mean, I think that must need to go that way because people are skint, you know, but they want to go out.
And if you
there's
can't afford a hotel,
here.
why don't you? I used to go and stay on. John De Silva, when we went to the Hacienda, John De Silva had a flat. Sasha used to rent a room off him, and we used to sleep on the floor in the living room.
Yeah.
And when he came up, he's like, "Oh, sorry, I nearly squashed your cat." You know, he's sleeping in the. You know that. I mean, I'm not saying we, but you know, all the kind of extras. And now the major problem is, I used to phone up Wetherell, for example, and I'm going to send you a ticket down for the flight. You coming up? I mean, we would get him a hotel, or a whatever. But now you've got people they've got a manager. The agent can't tell you because he needs to speak to the manager. He needs to speak to the artist. And when you do get the booking, the agent needs to get the logistics person to talk to the. You know, it's a lot of bollocks. A lot of fucking. There's 5 people doing the job of 0.
Yeah,
you don't need.
And that's obviously in part having a detrimental effect to the industry, Dave, isn't it?
I mean, I'm not saying it shouldn't be organised and it shouldn't be business-like, and it's not like we're all jumping in a car. I mean, we used to jump in the car and go anywhere. Nottingham.
I mean, where do you see it going, Dave? You know, because you've been in it so long, and obviously, you know, dance music.
I do think it's going to survive through local people doing good things and having their friends coming to gigs.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Glasgow punches so much above its weight. You look at the artists that have come from this city.
Yeah,
why do we need to fly anyone in? If they fly in, they should be paying us.
I'm joking. Dave, see, just to say, obviously, right, you've been in this game for near enough 40 years.
Well, let's say 37.
37, and you've just even by talking today, Dave, with the
other 3 I was clubbing.
With the things that you've done, right? So much of this city and the scene, not just in Glasgow, Scotland, but the worldwide scene owes so much to you, right? So can you?
I don't believe it owes anything to me.
No, but
I think us as an outfit have set a good example.
Certainly have. I mean, legendary
and
parties.
I think everyone else has had the. There's so many other people who have made this city amazing.
Of course.
And even before us, people like Simple Minds or Orange Juice or Postcard Records.
But so many people have got so many memories which are connected to things that you've set up, right? I kind of would like to finish off.
It does humble me, you saying that.
Yeah, of course. Like, what's true. I would like to kind of finish off by, have you got any, like... what would you tell to a young promoter who's just getting into this, getting into the industry, or anyone else, like an artist or folk which do sound or lights? What kind of advice would you give them? Or
it's a hard one, but you probably need to have another part-time job, and you need to really love what you're doing and dedicate yourself, and be lucky.
I think on that note, Dave. Thank you so much, for coming on to the podcast. It's been such a wonderful journey to hear all the stories. So I'd just like to kind of finish off by saying Thank you so much to Dave Clarke. That was episode 3 of the Glasgow Clubbing Podcast.
Let me say that we don't do retro a lot. We've recently done 3 nights at the venue formerly known as the Arches, called Platform, and it's been amazing. Stuart and Ord have really dug deep into the archive, but our thing's about future music. SLAM have got a great new album called Dark Channel coming out next month. It's all about the positive energy of the dance floor and getting away from this divisive world that we live in through music. We also have a daytime party at SWG3, which is just about getting together in the daylight. And even though this party's only for 1,000 people, we're not, it's not the Riverside, but it's our version of it with underground artists like Stingray and Zenka Brothers, Nightwave, and Dominic, and Craigie Knows, who's got a 10-year birthday. It's a lot of local talent, a lot of underground talent, and it's part of the future. There's good stuff happening, and also do your own thing always, and try and enjoy yourselves.
No, guys.
That was incredible, Dave.
Thank you so much for listening, for watching. That was Dave Clarke for episode 3 of the Glasgow Clubbing Podcast. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you,
guys.
That was brilliant.